It's one. Oh, man.
We're all set, we're recording.
Okay.
All right, welcome to the October 22nd, 2025 meeting of the Envision Needham Center Project Working Group. As a reminder, this meeting is being broadcast to the town's YouTube channel and also via Zoom. It is being recorded for publication, later viewing, and administrative purposes. I have not been notified that anyone else is recording the meeting. But if anyone wishes to do so, please notify the chair. I haven't seen Peter O'Neill raising his hand online, so we will take a roll call attendance. Eileen Baker,
Here.
Tim Bolger is here, Artie Crocker,
Here.
Lisa Altock,
Here.
all good.
Here.
Liz Hay,
Here.
she waved and said here.
Here.
Yeah, that's okay. Paula Jacobson.
Here.
Kevin Keen.
Here.
Avery Newton.
Here.
Diane Nanny.
Here.
Who's online?
I just have Liz, unless the
Just Liz.
iPhone is somebody, but I need them to raise their hand
Okay.
before pulling them in.
All right. We also, and Karis Lustig.
Here.
Okay, so the first item on the agenda is summary from the update meeting from the select board. Karis and I went to the select board last week and just kind of let them know about our progress and kind of where we are, and let them know we don't have plans kind of finalized to show them. We talked a little bit about the developing a matrix and kind of where we are as far as the timeline being a little bit more flexible than what we presented earlier this year. So some of the feedback we've had from the select board, number one was to update the website, because apparently when you went to Vision Needham Center, it showed a previous plan from May, I believe, that was maybe causing confusion a little bit. So we went ahead or someone went ahead and updated the website. So now when you open it up, you can kind of see the three plans and roll them against the existing conditions. I think the other point they made was to be very clear about the loss of parking, which I think Diane kind of brought up last time, was to kind of figure out a way to let that be known, like what is the potential for in any of the options. And I think we'll discuss that in our next agenda item. And just to be clear about presenting the trade-offs between any of the options. So I think, the matrix kind of does that a little bit, but we'll have to be very clear about the trade-offs for all those things. And then the other one was just parking minimums was mentioned already, and so just making sure that that is kind of flows with what we're doing here. So I think if we're talking about removing parking, then the parking minimums, I think, should be.
Are you talking about the what we have in the bylaws as far as parking minimums, those type of thing?
Yes, Marianne just asked us, that the parking minimum should be looked at, should be sort of a concern. So if we're thinking about removing parking, then I think that she wanted the parking minimums to be updated. That's not really in our charge. Just what was told to us.
To add, one other thing to add, I heard that, to Diane's point, what do the three versions mean? We decide on where the curbs go, and once that's locked in, it's locked in. So 4-lane doesn't mean we're doing bump outs and parklets. It means the curb is we have 4 lanes. Hybrid is one thing and the 2 lanes another thing, but we're not doing parklets. We're not putting a curb down and then encroaching on it again. So once it's done, it's done. So it's not like we've decided what parking is and then maybe we nibble away at it. It's set.
So the reason I brought that question up is right in the Envision Needham tape.
Yeah.
It talks about the 3 plans, and it says all 3 plans maximize parking.
Yep.
Include no bike lanes.
That's-
However, bike lanes can be added and parking can be removed in future scenarios. So I wanted to know what those future scenarios could be, because my understanding was if we did the 4-lane.
Yeah.
That was it.
Yeah.
There was no changes being made. The town chose to go with the minimalist And it was just the two with the slip lane would
Yeah.
be when you could make changes.
Yeah.
And that's what I just wanted to be clear on, because I wasn't clear.
So I
I-
think that's the next agenda item as far as parking goes. 'Cause
That's like-
we got some clarity from the select board when we met with them. Based on the questions that we had from our last meeting. And then the select board, we figured that would be like its own conversation about how to navigate, I think, some of the challenges that we have between.
Yeah.
Amenities and parking.
Right.
And again, to be clear about like what that means. when you read it
Exactly.
There, like what is, could actually happen, so. You have anything else to add from the meeting?
No, I think a couple things, we've gotten a lot of feedback, either in these meetings or emails, why are you looking at 3 different plans? Isn't there a 4th plan, which is to do nothing? And I think we heard again from the select board that they are asking us to do something with the downtown. That was, they re-emphasized that they were not looking at a 4th option of not doing improvements. The 4-lane option that is presented is sort of the minimalist approach, the least amount of change, that is sort of physically available within that corridor. So there really isn't a, take the sidewalks we currently have and just rehabilitate them, open up the road and put in drainage, because we have to make things like comply with making sure that you have a full lane width for a car, for example, which some areas of the downtown we don't have. Or conversely, if we put a sidewalk back, that sidewalk has to be wide enough to be ADA accessible. Which means you may have to move the curb line in order to accommodate that. So the 4-lane solution that we're presenting is the least disruptive solution that we have, knowing that construction of any kind, even, opening up the road for drainage has a disruptive effect on the downtown. So I think that was clarified as well as I think the, just reemphasizing, I think, Tim, a little bit what you'd said, but that the goal of the committee is to provide information to the select board to make a decision, not to make the decision for the board.
Yes,
I think there is I don't want to say a 4th option, but maybe a first option, first 1, 2, 3, 4 type thing, and that is have the existing conditions we have now, but improve the crosswalks, do the bump outs with the crosswalks, and make those safer, and add some other ones where we need them. So add them where we need them, some parking's gonna have to change when we do that, we know that. We know the parking will have to change, because the 4-lane alternative now eliminates something going east, I believe at Highland Ave. So one alternative, there would be an alternative where we just take the existing one and make the crosswalks better.
So what I'm trying to articulate is
Yeah.
that the 4-lane solution is the legal way to accomplish that. So again, you can't just take an existing sidewalk and repave it if it doesn't meet ADA compliance. You have to widen it in order to make ADA compliance. If the lane width is not, if the lane width is at some places 7.5 feet, you can't have a lane width at 7.5 feet, and you can't accommodate, what is perceived as 2 lanes in certain locations. So the only thing I would say to that is the change in the slip lane is probably the only thing that you could alter, you could maintain, I guess, and still keep it legally compliant, although you would have to add additional signalization, because our slip lane currently is not signalized, which means that pedestrians go out into the right of way without any protections when people are crossing, when drivers are crossing that intersection. So there would be some signalization there to make that compliant. But I think we're not allowed to restore or touch a condition that makes it non-compliant from the beginning. And so the goal of that 4-lane plan is to be compliant and safer and make the minimal adjustments possible in order to accomplish that goal.
So we are absolutely not allowed to add a crosswalk. And if the existing travel lane is going this way, they're a couple of feet short, we have to eliminate that, even though we're just adding a crosswalk.
If I go and restripe something, I have to make sure that restriping plan meets requirements. And so even if I were to repave the road, we would need to restripe it so that it is legally compliant.
But that's not like ripping the road apart, that's just repeat,
So I guess we're talking about 2 things. So I'm talking about physical layout of the downtown. When we make changes, we have to make it compliant.
Mhm.
So if there's a 3.5 foot sidewalk and there isn't enough space, you have to have 5 feet. then we have to, we can't touch it unless we can get 5 feet.
Right, but let's just say you decide, so, like, I've heard a lot of people say, well, why aren't they just fixing the crosswalks, the ones at like Pickering and the ones at Maple? If you decide to fix those, why do you have to,
What do you mean by fix?
like, make them safer?
So there's things we can make them a little bit safer than the current condition. There are not things that we can make them significantly safer than the current condition. So right now, for example, we have temporary measures at both of those crosswalks that basically do accomplish that same goal. It extends, it's a bump out without a bump out. It's Jersey barriers. That's really the improvement.
So you can't put bump outs there, but then not along. the-
Well, if you do bump outs, you have to redo the drainage because the curb line contains catch basins and other drainage structures. So it's not as simple as just adding a little bit of concrete and a granite curb.
Well, I thought we were planning on upgrading the drainage anyway, and that was a big part of the whole project, is do something.
I mean, I guess I would say if I'm hearing the fourth option, right? To me is we do nothing, right? And that's nothing. But that would be not drainage, that would be, I mean, it would be not resolving the issues that we have with the downtown.
No, I mean, drainage, there's no reason why drainage can't be in there in a fourth version of a fourth option.
So again, every time we touch the road, we have to make it legally compliant. And actually, the
Here.
length of a crosswalk is not something that is, like, there's no law that says a crosswalk needs to be one width or another. There are safety measures that say that things will be safer or not safer depending on how you have it conditioned. But there are laws that deal with issues like ADA accessibility, and roadway compliance. So that's what we do have to follow.
Karis, hi, what is currently
Remove
not
yourself.
compliant? What in the downtown
Hear
is,
you.
can't hear me?
Is it that speaker?
Mute, and that's working. Hold on, let me just double check and make sure.
I'm,
Could hear her earlier.
can you hear me now?
Hold on, let me try this. Let me just do like a little cheat around and see if I. Right. Want to try one more time, and if not, I'll just switch you to my laptop.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
My question is, what is currently not compliant in the downtown?
So I can go through section by section with the apex, but I know we have sidewalks currently that are not wide enough. And again, I indicated we have lanes that are not in areas of those lanes, not wide enough to be considered a travel lane.
Okay, I would be interested to know if you can have them put on the plans, what is currently not compliant.
The other thing I would just indicate when the select board reiterated their charge, that their charge is for 3 plans and that they still are looking for us to look at 3 different solutions for the downtown.
We speak.
No, I'm sorry, yeah. Okay, so we will go to the next agenda item, which is to review parking and concept plan. So this is, from the feedback from the select board, is to really kind of figure out a way to understand what those parking losses might be in a scenario. And so you have like a chart to show, or
Yeah, so one of the things I think we've heard across the board, we heard it at our last meeting and we heard it from the select board as well, is I think this concern around clarity of the different options we have and how it will impact parking as a final developed plan as opposed to what the potential is. And so one of the questions we sort of had was, what could we either do to provide a recommendation to the select board or a recommendation that could be part of an outreach and survey about minimum parking requirements in each of the plans. So we talked a little bit internally with Apex about, what would be, sorry, I just want to share this with you. What would be a reasonable threshold, right? Like if you wanted to continue to have outdoor dining on Great Plain Ave, which we currently do have. Um. You know. And we have parking design, we know what we can fit in this area. Could you say, we wanna have this many parking spaces in each one of these solutions, give or take 3 spots, right? Because when they actually lay it out, we're still in concept design, we're not in final design, so. There is some flexibility, but I think it would be useful to show,
You zoom in a little bit.
yeah, and I apologize, I don't know if it has the current condition, so I'm gonna ask Tyler if you could quickly look up what the current number of parking spots is in the downtown.
Steve, the
It's right here.
thing businesses are getting upset
Oh, thank
about
you.
is that, like, you're saying like, oh, this plan has 81 spots and it has 79, but you're netting out the spots. And you're counting like side streets and stuff like that, and I think you need to detail that more, so people who are gonna lose parking in front of their store understand that, and I think I heard Mary Ann request that at the meeting as well. Like a block by block detail of each spot, like, you know, in front of my street, we have 6 now, is it going down to 4? And what do you say, why are you saying we're not losing spaces, because you're counting Chapel Street, which to me doesn't count, you know what I mean? So I think it needs to be detailed that way.
The existing is listed there, this on the footnote.
Oh, thank you very much. So 98 is the existing. So I think,
So like 3 spots on Dedham Avenue does nothing for me, because that's so many blocks down, and that's where it needs to be very clear, like literally on the map, when people are looking at it, so that they have an actual understanding of, because just writing like, was 98 spots now 101, that's not really informational, that's just putting numbers up there, and that makes it look better than it is for certain businesses.
I get that, and I agree with it, but at the same time, it's like, the person who's parking on Denham Ave isn't taking the spot in front of your store. So there is a bit of a net gain.
But there's not for me, there is not, that's what I'm saying, so like, if I'm losing spots on my block, I'm not getting any time in that game. You know what I mean? So that's why businesses need to know.
Right.
You know, like Barbara from Hearthstone is gonna completely lose the spot in front of her store. So anybody on Dedham Avenue is not gonna make up, that's not gonna make up for that spot. That's what I'm trying to say,
Yeah,
so.
so I think that we have the opportunity to kind of maybe make some scenarios about like what, so that at least we get our head around like, okay, what is the total amount of parking in the area? So it's relatively close.
But are you counting side streets or just Great
Yes,
Plain
like
Avenue?
in the project area, which is the Main Street and some of the side streets, like what is the total number that's possible? Because there are businesses.
But-
Yes, there's a give and take, but there are businesses on Dedham Ave that have no parking in front of their store that will benefit from having it there. So there will definitely be a give and take. With that, but I think we should have an idea of like what the maximum amount of loss could potentially be.
I
and
think you need
then-
to be detailed, Tim.
And then I think afterwards that, like, you know, once we've kind of decided on a lane configuration, I think the committee continues to have that discussion of like, where is it reasonable to look at those parking spaces that may be removed, and which ones make sense and which ones don't. So I think it's a good idea to have an idea of like what the worst case scenario would be, and maybe we can come to some sort of recommendation for what that worst case scenario is, and then afterwards, like we still have the ability to kind of go space by space when we're thinking about some of the trade-offs and some of the other uses that we could use for those parking spaces. We can do that as a committee at the next juncture.
So when is the feedback from the public gonna come into place, before or after we do that? Cause we need to be transparent with the public about that.
Yes,
We need to be transparent with the businesses about that. We need their feedback.
Yeah.
We need to be transparent with the select board about that. So is the select board gonna make a decision on which plan they're gonna go with before we do that or after we do that? It's important for it to be before,
so I think
I mean,
the
after.
challenge is that we're not in full design for this project yet.
We shouldn't make any decision on which plan is gonna be picked until it's designed. It's not just like any kind of side street sort of plan. This is like 4 blocks of businesses. And like, we are the downtown, right? We have like, you go from one street to the other, it's business, 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 but that's the concern. And we can't just be dismissed that way with our concerns. How can we choose a plan if we don't know if we're gonna have parking in front of our store?
So I guess my question would be, and maybe you could help me, on all three of these plans, we have rough parking layouts, right, for each of these concepts. Do you feel like if they were developed the way they show now, that there'd be, from a parking perspective, a major difference, not traffic, not congestion, not all that concern, but on the parking alone from these plans, do you think that there is a significant difference from one plan to the other and how it would affect you or impact businesses in
Well, the
general?
first difference is when you say, if we pick the 4-lane plan, we could potentially lose all our parking. That's one, right?
Okay, so I think that's what we're trying to clarify in this conversation is, do we say, we want to make the recommendation that in the 4-lane plan, we are only willing to lose up to 4 spots for things like parklets or outdoor dining? Do we want to fix that number more to reduce that uncertainty? I think that's the question we're
100%.
asking.
100%.
So that's kind of what we're putting out.
Then I have a question, and we talk about the parklet down in front of, Sweet Bases. They've been using that for about 5 years now. I think it's pretty safe to assume that the community would want to continue that. So can't we just design a 4-lane plan that already includes that? Like, it's not an add-on, it's just, we've been doing it for 5 years. We know there's gonna be pushback if we take it away. Let's just design a 4-lane plan that already has that space.
So that, I think, currently takes 2 spots. Is that right, Tyler?
I would say
Yeah.
3.
I think it's just two.
Is it 2, but 3 with the Jersey barriers that need to take this? Yeah, so,
My half car fits in the other car.
so that's again, when I was thinking of that, like, 3
Right,
parking spots plus or minus, a little bit, that's what I was
Yeah.
thinking of, was like, basically,
like we pretty much know,
Because that's the only spot that there's outdoor dining on Green Plain Avenue.
right,
There's not one other restaurant that has it.
No.
no.
no, I'm trying to think, there is a new one going in, but I think they have private
Yeah.
space that they're looking at
the Rice
occupying.
Farm, they have it behind them, and that's privately owned, that lot.
And then I know at one point you said there were sections, at last week's meeting, you said there were sections of the road where it isn't even safe to put a parklet in because of the configuration of the road and the road narrowing. But there were other places where you could potentially put one in. So I think it would be helpful is if you're going to potentially put one in, when we're presenting this to the public, we need to show them that in a 4-lane plan, we could put a parklet here and we could put a parklet here. And in doing so, you would lose 6 parking spaces. And that's the most you would ever lose in lane 4, because lane 4, the 4-lane plan does not accommodate bikes at all. And that would be the end all and be all, and then people would feel comfortable, because right now it's vague, and how can you vote on something when you don't know what the second,
Recommend something like that.
right?
I like that idea just because it makes it a little bit more concrete and in particular with, I mean, Sweet Basil could just, they could decide to close up shop tomorrow. I mean, I hope they don't, but I think
Right.
they could decide that, maybe another restaurant would come in there.
Right, and that's a lot of restaurants.
But that's like less hypothetical than, and then say, right, put one in front of the rice barn and say, maybe, if in the future, this is what that would look like. So maybe we don't make that part of the design and don't carve it out of the sidewalk, but just be like, this is where it would go is it like possible to sort of highlight that and just to show me, just to be like, okay, if we choose this plan and 1 and 2 spaces for
Right.
outdoor dining on
That's for the
GPA,
second one.
this is what it looks like.
And but why, I'm just confused, how are you even gonna decide where another parklet for eating is going? to-
Well, that, it would just be like, that would
that's-
take up this.
If it's not there, then it's not there. And when they rent their spot, I don't have private parking where my store is. And I knew that going into it. I'm not gonna all of a sudden get private parking, So if they don't have outdoor dining
I think,
and they decide to open a restaurant there, it is what it is. I don't know.
I think that's the criteria that Karis is talking about, though. I know when we went into COVID, that town engineering sat down and went through multiple spots throughout the whole downtown to be able to figure out where is it even possible to
Right.
put parklets in. And then narrowed that down from, once you looked at traffic, you looked at all the considerations for safety and so on. So looking at what we have in downtown, there may be places that can be identified as being safe and could have a parklet And and people should know that. So if a restaurant moves into a place and it happens to be in one of the places that the town has said, could be a safe place for parking, then that's it. But I'm guessing there's probably only gonna be one or two more of those places.
I think that part of this plan is once we accept
Yeah,
the
once we
curb, there's
accept it,
no
we
adding.
accept it.
So we have to decide when we pick our plan, where we want to put those two parklets, because once the curb is set, whether there's a restaurant there now or there's a restaurant there later.
Just,
If there's no parklet,
Yeah.
they're not gonna let us add one.
just to, I guess, I want to clarify, if outdoor dining, if the sidewalk is being expanded out for outdoor dining, there is no parklet. Parklet is an addition that was stuck
Right.
into the street that takes up parking places. So it doesn't mean that if we didn't do that, that at some point in the future, a parklet could be put in there, right? We don't
No.
want to do that, but I'm saying if you're identifying that as a spot, otherwise you'd have to build it in right from the get-go, whether the place was going to use it or not.
I think Liz's hand is up again.
Go ahead, Liz.
You guys can finish this conversation. I have another question regarding deliveries and loading zones. So if you want to finish talking about the parklets.
So the only thing I'll just add to that, because I think it's helpful, is basically what you're doing is you're potentially limiting a future business, right? Because you're building something not for the next 5 years, the next 10 years, you're building it for the next 50+ years. So it does, again, I think this goes down a little bit to the desire of how you want the town to function. If people want more opportunity for outdoor dining and we don't construct it now, it does limit that in the future. Or it allows for it in the future. And I think that's really just where the choice is. I think on the parklet conversation, like ideally getting away from temporary structures, I think temporary is more challenging from a public safety perspective than permanent when you're on a protected curb.
Sure.
So I think the preference, it does open up a little bit more, but like, you're not gonna wanna do it right next to the train, you're not gonna wanna do it near an intersection, you're not gonna do it mid-block, right? You're not gonna sort of have parking and then an indent and then more parking, so it's gonna stack on either one bump out or another. So I think there is some self-limiting conversation, and there's probably also capacity limiting, right? Like I don't know if that's the culture in Needham, but like, you're not gonna have 12 restaurants on Great Plain Ave, all with outdoor dining on the same corridor. So it's not like the demand is there necessarily for every, for a whole street, like Church Street in Burlington, Vermont, right? The demand isn't necessarily there either for that.
And I think the other thing too is, I think one of the questions that came up in one of the previous meetings was all about, well, if you bump out, so let's just talk very specifically in terms of Sweet Basil. So if you bump out to give them the outdoor dining, do you bump out that all the way down? And then we also know that in that spot, I was out there looking at it the other day, and even the parklet is partially into a lane. So right now, I was just standing there watching cars, and every single car that turns that corner or comes straight across all gravitates to the yellow line. They all stay on that outside single lane all the time. And then there's a space between that white line and where you get to the parklet or beyond. That is, nobody drives in it. I mean, I must have been there for 15 minutes watching light change after light change. Everyone turns the corner, goes to the left and stays left. So the question is, from a design standpoint, if that works for the intersections and the other part of the lane is not actually being used and it's still operating safely, does that give the opportunity to be able to move the things over? So even if there is, because it goes from what looks like 1.5 lanes basically there down to 1 lane very quickly as it proceeds towards the crosswalk.
So that is the 4-lane. In the 4-lane solution, it does eliminate that lane, and you do get much wider sidewalk on that corridor.
And does that allow you to be able to still have parking along the side?
Yes, so it does. It
So
won't accommodate the full parklet that Basil's has, as far as gate width. It only is a part of that, so you may want to add an extended bump out in order to accommodate that. But as far as the actual curb line, it extends it pretty significantly from what it is currently, and it allows you to maintain all that parking.
so it actually is recovering parking.
Yes, and again, that was the initial design when the center of town was already designed. So it was always intended that that section of Great Plain Avenue was gonna maintain one lane as opposed to start as one lane, go to 2 lanes, and then go back to 1 lane, which is what it currently does.
Yeah, we talked about this last time as far as that sidewalk being allowed wider. The stores slash restaurants, businesses going down that way will have some opportunity to, not a big dining space outside, but definitely have space for tables and chairs.
Yeah, and I think, part of this, whole idea is to be able to look for where are the opportunities? Like if there's an opportunity to do something that really makes things better and allows us to be able to do something like retain the parking, or in this particular case, actually gain a few parking places that even, by widening the sidewalk all the way down and still allowing all the parking still to be able to go all down the inside. That sounds like a win-win. I mean, because we've said that the lane configuration should be that way anyway. So I would say that if nothing else has come out of the discussion so far, that that should just be, designed into a proposed plan. Just the way it is, the sidewalks bump out to whatever the extent they can. That gives them as much outdoor dining as they can get, right? And then you have the parking lane, and then you have the single lane.
So you're saying no parklet there, just
Right.
widen side?
Yeah, just widen the side, because that way, because we've got, first of all, it increases safety. But the other side is that you also, that whole corner there, all the way down, is almost all restaurants.
Right, but then you have like Plaza Exchange and the golf place.
Well, that's true,
So
but
we have to take them.
but I mean, there's no detriment to them having.
As long as they have parking, yeah.
they're not
Yeah.
losing
No,
parking.
I
They're not
agree.
losing any parking, so that's what I'm saying, so if all the parking's there and you get the wider opportunity, if a business does, it might look like if at some point, one of the businesses there turned over. If the golf place went out or something like that, and the restaurant wanted to go in, they're sort of built to be able to do that, so that actually encourages even more of that development along that way.
I've heard from a lot of people who, a lot of them, who do not want to lose any parking, so I'd be really hesitant to give away parking. But if you ever read Jeff Speck, who does a lot of city designing and, sort of like Great Plain Ave design stuff, he says for sidewalks, the car buffer of parked cars is actually sort of a needed component for safety. Because imagine if we did a parklet just with curb and then took in a parking space. I mean, you're eating right next to a car that's going by. You would need the Jersey barrier back, even if we put it in the middle of the street, like in a parking spot. So I think we're trying to avoid that. So I'd prefer to have wider sidewalk, curb, parking buffer, traffic. I think parked cars play a role in safety.
Yeah, no question.
I just will also say that parking space isn't necessarily the only use for it would be outdoor dining. You could do green space or a tree.
Yeah,
or-
right.
So there are other uses that it could occupy.
I would also have green drainage structures as well, which is
Yeah.
gonna be a
So
challenge.
it's not just exclusively outdoor dining.
Yeah.
And those things also provide a buffer to the sidewalk. I was saying that.
Okay. And on that point too, is that, say, you widen the sidewalk all the way down, but in front of it is, a Taylor or something. You can use temporary, not temporary, meaning they're not bolted into the ground. Planters and all those types of things. So if the use of the business changed, you have the flexibility to be able to make the outdoor dining happen. Whereas with the, with the permanent infrastructure of the wider sidewalk, that gives you lots of flexibility. So, in the spots that we could achieve that kind of thing, there may be only one, but it's one more place where it actually would make things much nicer.
It's also a space where it's minimally disruptive of what's going on now.
Mhm.
As far as lane traffic, what's stuff.
Yeah.
So I think when I look at the plans and I think about what we're talking about, how we're gonna present this to the public, I think about if I was walking in, not being on this committee, and came to the town hall and wanted to actually understand it. And so for me, what would help is to see each plan, block by block. And then somebody to say, we could extend the sidewalk, which would accommodate outdoor dining in this area, if the community wanted that. On these plans, this is what it would look like. If we added a bike lane for plans 2 and 3, this is what it would look like, this is how it would impact parking. So then when I was making my decision and trying to let you know which lane I liked, because I might love the 4-lane plan, but really want this extra amenity that I can't get there. But I can't tell you that unless I can see it laid out in really simple terms, because I'm not gonna spend a lot of time reading all the details, and I'm not gonna have sat in this meeting and gone through it with all of you. I'm just an average mom walking it off the street, trying to give you some input on how I want to help the community. And I think that's what we have to remember too, is the people we're reaching out to may not sit and go to all these meetings. They might not look at everything online. The businesses definitely need to have their parking, and it needs to be clear to them, where is the parking staying and where is the parking going away? And how does each plan impact that positively or negatively? And I think that's really, at the end of the day, what we, as a committee, need to be able to show the public very clean and simple.
Yeah, we don't process it the same, you know, like as an engineer would. So it has to be like a first glance, like I said before, people don't read, like we don't read, you know, so it just has to be as clear as possible.
Yeah, and I think the one thing I'm trying to avoid is, I think, like, I'll give an example. When we were looking at the concept plans in May, there was a lot of anxiety when I would talk to some of the business owners. And I kept on trying to explain it's a concept and things could change, but I also don't want to evoke that level of stress as well. So I would certainly appreciate any feedback we could get on how to make it clear that these, like, we're still, if you think about like a project, like this is like a baby, right? We're not like at graduation. So how do we get people to understand that this is the very beginning of a process and not the end of a process? Because I think there is some concern about that.
That's why I think we have to get as much solid details as we can before we present it to the public. I do, I really do, because then if they think that they've said, oh, okay, to this one thing, and then that all changes, that's when you get the upheaval. That's when everybody, it was like, well, this was what it wasn't supposed to be, you know?
Yeah, so this is like the democratic query, right? Because we were asked to get feedback earlier in the process than we did it the last time we discussed the project, because people felt like they didn't have a voice. So we need to give them something to give feedback to, but we don't want to give them feedback to something that unnecessarily evokes anxiety or stress. And so it's trying to figure out the balance between that, because that's what I'm personally struggling with. I mean, to get to full design is a very expensive proposition. And you can't change it once you can't change that much when you get to full design. Like when you start figuring out where curbs go, what we're talking about here for the most part is going to be all the stuff that happens at the surface level. When we get into real design, that's all the expensive stuff that happens underground. And you can't change that, right? Like the surface impacts what happens underground. So you can't get to full design before you get response, because you wouldn't want to spend the money to do that. And anything that you do when you get public feedback that changes that design would then change everything kind of underneath it. That's where like the struggle is that we're at in this process. And that's why you usually go through like, concept iterations, and then you get into various stages of design.
Because I think people don't care about what's necessarily happening underground and the expensive stuff. They want to see, where is their parking going and how many travel lanes are they going to have to be going through in town, so that they're not sitting in 25 minutes of traffic. So I think if we can just solidify the two major things that we're getting so much feedback on from the public, whatever happens after that, I don't think that's going to affect them. So
Also,
I can give that information.
Sorry, Liz.
No, go
Also
ahead.
solidify the one thing that rattled everybody was when you said, if bike lanes were to come in, all the parking would go. That kind of stuff has to be solid.
So I think what I heard from the select board, and we're hearing tonight, that we're trying to solidify to get to the place where we can get feedback on concepts, because I appreciate that. I will just articulate, we cannot get 3 different projects to design phase for feedback. That is just not an option that we can go to. So it is always going to be in concept as far as prior to getting feedback. But I think what we heard was, in order to get feedback, we think these things need to be clear. That if we go with the 4-lane solution, that a bike lane is really not an option. And so that can be clear as part of a survey, right? Like, if we do this, then this is really not an option. The second thing is anxiety around parking, and if we can provide some limits, right, around like what could change, because in the design process, we may find that we don't have exactly enough space to get that extra one spot in, right? Like, that's what would happen as part of that process. So we want to be able to provide a little flexibility, right? But not so much that people are like, 30 spots, right? Or all the spots, or a block of spots, or whatever it ends up being. So trying to provide some certainty so that people feel like what they're saying they prefer is close to what gets constructed.
Yes, and if it's like, you're gonna, instead of saying you're gonna have 81 spots if you go with this, but only, you have to just be like, 6 spots here, 2 are gained on Chapel. Like, simple like that, and then if you only gain 1 on Chapel, no one's gonna hang you, you know what I mean? Like, just have.
So I appreciate that you think that, but, I apologize that I didn't get this out in advance. We just got it this morning. But Apex is working on this, and I'll certainly email it around, and we'll post it on the site afterward if you think that this is helpful, because it does do exactly that. It says 2 more spots on Garden, 3 spots, and 5 spots on Great Plain Ave. And those 5 spots are because the 5 spots we have currently either can't be constructed, we need to accommodate ADA, what have you. And then it does that in all of the alternatives. So like, I think that if you think that that's helpful, because I think that's kind of what you're describing. But I understand that people would need more than just the 5 seconds here to digest it.
I don't think you need blue, white, and yellow. Is there a purpose for that? It just adds an extra layer.
So I think
4-lane, 2-lane, but.
I think the hope had been that we could destigmatize, I guess, some of the 4-lane or 2-lane or 2-turn lane. I think the problem is you have to like super ingrain it into people in order for them to understand what the differences are between the plans, to use that nomenclature as opposed to using the other alternatives. So that was why, was because the committee had decided to when I had asked to name it, I was, we didn't want to give it numbers. We were concerned about the different lanes. This actually came from the 4-lane, 2-lane, and 2-lane hybrid came from resident. As just a shorthand. I don't have a strong, I'm fine with getting rid of the colors, but I think that that's up to the committee if they want to keep it or not.
Well, I think
Well,
one thing that just did me a little bit was, talking about they are concept plans, and they're not the final plan, no question about that. But when people look at these, they're looking at these, okay, whichever one goes through the process and makes it through the last gate, that, it's coming from the concept plans. It is everything. So so those are the ones, so the ones they're looking at are the ones that are going to give them anxiety or not give them anxiety. That's just a fact. That's the ones. So they can't look at it as, oh, don't worry about it. It's just, don't worry, it could change. This 2-lane could change, or 2-lane hybrid, anything could change. No, they can change, but not drastically from here to there. Just little things. So they have to look at it as, this is essentially where it's coming with little tweaks. This one's coming with little tweaks, this one. So that's what's going on. So they're concepts, but they're concepts that drive the final plan.
Yeah, I think the concern would be, for example, let's say Sweet Basil's decides to occupy another parcel in Great Plain Avenue instead of the one it is, right? You might not do the bump out there. You might do a parklet, a permanent curb extension in a different location. I think that's what I mean by the things that could change.
Well, I think I think actually a lot of us are agreeing, which was great. It's sort of like you don't want to be too hypothetical, and this is exactly the challenge that you're talking about, and that we've been over a couple of times now, where you don't want to be too hypothetical with these concept plans, but you also don't want to be too prescriptive or appear as being too prescriptive with the more detailed plans. That's the balance that I think we're all trying to sort of work toward here. So I think it's, whether it's, here's that potential curb bump out, I'll give you an example of a conversation that I had just last week. Someone asked why some of these plans have so much concrete. It's like, well, that's just the curb line. It's not actually gonna be like a slab of concrete, but people don't know because it's, again, too hypothetical. So that's like, we really need to kind of meet somewhere. So whether that's, here is where we don't need to be at the level of, here are where 6 birch trees can go. Like, we're not gonna ever get, that's but like, here are some of the features and here's what they could look like. Here's an example piece. I think that's something that it sounds like that's something that might be beneficial, we can also work toward that, just for communication purposes and understanding.
I wasn't talking about trees when I said detail.
Yeah. Just an example.
So I guess my thought is, since we're just looking at this today,
Mhm.
that we take the time off to digest this and then discuss at our next meeting if we want to set minimums and what those minimums would be for each three of the plans.
Minimums of
Parking. So we would say like, all right, you know, for the blue plan, it could be plus or minus 3 spots, right? For the white plan, it could be more. I mean, it depends on right, if we want them all to be the same or different as far as what could be utilized that could be either used as parking or it could be utilized for the other functions we discussed. And then I think I'll put it on the agenda the next time, the conversation of bike lanes with the 4-lane alternative, just so we can discuss that clearer and then make a decision when it's noticed in an agenda.
Okay, thank you.
What
is the, oh, sorry, Tiffany.
Go ahead.
What's the width of a parking, like, the parking isn't indicated on some of these plans, but if we were going to try to figure out where the parking is there a set length for each parking space?
I'm gonna defer to Tyler if
20?
20 feet?
20 feet by usually 8 feet, but they can be 10 feet wide if you're. Yeah. You're trying to fit them.
Okay. They could be one, it was 20 by 8
But
or,
width, so it'd be either 8 feet wide or 7 feet wide. Usually, an average car is around 6.5 feet to 8 feet wide, the other biggest or something. So, usually we go 8 feet.
I think on earlier plans, Apex had indicated 7.5 feet. for the plan.
7.5?
Yeah, it depends on the location and the context, but generally. You're not gonna notice a huge difference. It's really. The question from. That's. It's all washed out.
And for apples to apples, our current parking space is 20 feet long. Any parking that's in
In the plan.
No.
I think the answer to that might be ish.
Yeah.
Just if we're trying to like.
I think that's one of the struggles we have is we have some parking spots that if you were to lay it out to modern standards wouldn't.
That's what I was, okay.
And then the second item obviously is ADA accessible parking, and if that's something we're gonna be adding more in the plan, that then takes more
It does,
more width.
more width, but not more length.
Does it need a loading zone on the back? Handicap parking?
And so if you want a fully compliant handicap space, has a hatched area for loading.
Yeah.
You're dealing with parallel space. Yeah. Yeah, like you got, so. You have different levels.
Maybe longer than 20 feet.
Cause you're not gonna be,
No, staying in.
like the one that we have in town is.
Oh.
uh,
We can move on.
It's variable.
Okay,
Yeah.
variable.
Parking spaces can be as long as 20 feet, or they can be as short as 2 feet. So,
Okay. Thank you.
And Liz, you had a comment about loading and unloading. Do you still have that, you know?
Yeah, I just wanted to know where we landed with that. Like what's happening with the loading zones and where are they going and.
Yeah, so I think, again, we've talked about in all 3 plans, loading zones will have to be a consideration. I was talking with the town engineer and we were talking about, our zoning bylaws. And so, trucks are technically not supposed to be loading and unloading on the public right of way regardless. So we would look at building that in. And I think one of the things we talked about more broadly, which is sort of beyond the context of this and way more towards the back end of the design process, would be about curbside management, which Needham really hasn't done a lot of. The only time we really did anything with it was in the pandemic. And so that's when you basically look at the parking allocation you have and you say, like right now, everything is 2 hour. And so you could say, well, actually, you know, this business has a pickup business, right? So people really are doing transactional stuff and they're in every 15 minutes. So you could make certain spots like 15-minute spots, so they turn over faster, closer to the business that then does that transactional process. The same thing I think would be what we would be looking at a loading zone is, and we're talking to other towns too, who also have these. where it would be parking spaces during certain periods of the day and loading zones during other periods of the day. But we also have to do we have to do a better analysis of all the businesses, how they're oriented and whether or not they do have capacity or accessibility on side roads or within their own parcel. So do they have we have a few businesses that have alleyways in the back or that have private, smaller roads on the side. It's probably easier for the truck to deliver on the main road, but it doesn't necessarily mean that that's the only alternative. So, we don't have an update on that, but we are doing further look into where those loading zones would make sense. And I think what we talked about in the last meeting was we were anticipating likely 2 of them on sort of either ends. It's just figuring out where those would be.
That's not permanent, right? I mean,
It's striping.
it's striking,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
if there needed to be a change for a later date, if we
Yeah.
decided on one here and it didn't work and it could be moved somewhere else, that can be done.
Correct.
Later.
Is one of the things that would be considered is that they're actually not using it, because I talked to all 3 delivery people. They have no intentions on using a loading zone. Because they have to stick to schedule and they don't care if they get a ticket. They all told me that, like, I flat out asked, and one of them even said something about like, if they had to adhere to loading zones, that they would demand green boxes throughout the town, and that they would get to pick where the green boxes goes, that you don't, like, the town doesn't even have a say,
What are great boxes?
like, where they would just leave shipments. Yeah, yeah. Because-
That would work well.
Yeah, cause they're not gonna park somewhere and start like luggage.
Yeah, why?
Correct. So I don't know if that's something that you would consider for taking away a loading zone if they're not being used, and then it's just like a a wasted spot.
Yeah, I mean, we will, like I said, it is striping, so it's not one, and again, I think when we talked about it, it didn't look like there was ones that were required to be loading zones. I think one of the things when we did the parking study, it showed that 6 p.m. on a Friday evening was like the peak parking demand for the downtown area. So, if we don't see that there's shipments, right, we didn't get that data, then that would be a perfect opportunity to open those back up for parking.
When you talk about curb management, you're talking about meter time?
It could be a whole host of things. So some of it's meter time, some of it's, like I said, express parking. And so it could be all those things. We haven't even talked about. Parking meters is sort of in again, that finalized design component.
And I was asking is like, I noticed down by the post office, they have several spots right in the front that are 15-minute meters, but I'm assuming, let's say the post office went away and a different business moved in. You could at some point in time, change that 15-minute meter to a 2-hour meter. That's a simple change that has nothing to do with curbing. That's just a simple. Whatever you.
Yeah, parking management from that perspective is much simpler to alter, change, and modify based on the type of business that you have at each location than adding outdoor dining, for
I
example.
just wanted to make sure I understood, so.
Yeah.
I have one more clarity on the loading zone. So what I think I heard is that none of them, if we put 2 on Great Plain, neither of them are permanent.
You mean
have to
24
be.
hours a day that they're restricted?
Yeah.
And they could
or
move.
that they could move.
Yes.
At any point in time.
Yes.
Okay. You also said that we were gonna look at some of the side streets for certain businesses to have their deliveries that could happen on a side street. Is that any part of this? Does that have to be?
So there's nothing that we would be doing to modify our infrastructure there to accommodate that. I think the issue or the concern is, bottlenecking on Great Plain Avenue in particular. And how do you manage that? And again, it
Okay.
is managed through our zoning
Okay.
based on the regulation where it comes
Got
to
it.
where people can load and unload. But again, that's back to the people don't read thing,
They just said they won't do
or
it.
they won't do it,
Yeah.
which is a struggle.
Yeah, they have to
um,
stay on their schedule is what they told me, so they don't care if they get a ticket.
Yeah, but we can certainly, like I said, there are neighboring communities that have the same condition that we're looking at, and we can certainly reach out to them and find out how they accommodate it. And again, it probably depends on the time that the delivery is coming in. My guess is if it's coming in, before 8 or 9 o'clock, it's not so much of an issue. If it's coming in after that, that's where the struggle is.
Well, I certainly,
Oh, but
I certainly think it makes sense to, have something early morning hours, whatever it is. Then, stripe, don't park here at 6 a.m. to 8 a.m.
Right.
Then simply just let nature take its course. It's gonna be what it is. They're gonna do what they're
Yeah.
gonna do.
they also said something about, the upkeep of a loading zone. They make like that is no removal gonna happen on the loading zone. So that doesn't happen right away, the loading zone doesn't do them any good. That was something they were expressing
Well, they're
also.
just part of parking, they're just part of the parking space.
No, I know exactly what you're referring to.
Parking isn't.
would have-
When we have snow events. When you clear the downtown, and I will say, the wider the road, the more snow you have to move, but. The sidewalk, you have to move the snow as well, so it all gets moved at one point, but what ends up happening is the parking stalls do end up stashing the snow. And then we come back that evening and we'll clear it out, so I understand what you're saying.
And they also mentioned like the snow, like getting to the sidewalk, like there was no
Yeah.
paths this last winter, like for them to go from. Am I making sense?
Yep, no, I know exactly what you're talking about, yep.
But something like that, and just, related to businesses, because I know businesses clear the sidewalk in front of them. I'm not sure how long it would, would take after that initial time, but do they usually then cut a slot into the parking area?
So it's,
My guy does it.
yeah, so I think it depends. The bylaw basically requires them to clear 5 feet. It does not necessarily require them to clear access to the sidewalk. DPW, it depends. It's not every storm is the same, but generally speaking, if we get over 6 inches of snow, we will come back after we've let our staff sleep for, some period of time. We'll come back either 24 or 48 hours later, and then we'll do a clearing where we'll either do a punch out, so there's like a gap, or we'll do a full removal where we remove it. The challenge is the weather we've had recently is not the kind of snow that cooperates very well with that schedule, because it's got a lot of wet in it, and then it's either going from hot to cold, and it freezes in place, and that does become a challenge.
All right, so we'll all review this
Yeah.
kind of next time and come back with maybe more ideas, some numbers we can kind of go forward with. And the next agenda item is the survey questions, and so, we had looked at them before, we made some suggestions on the original ones, and now you're looking for additional feedback.
I think my question is there anything, as we're sort of have a little bit more time to develop them, is there anything that we're not asking in those survey questions that we should be that people think we should be asking? I think one of the pieces of feedback we got from the last meeting we had and with the select board was it might be useful to try to get out some of the amenities that people are looking for now, so that way when we go into that second phase, we have an idea of what people are looking for, like what kind of would motivate, gets them interested in the downtown. So I just was sort of wanted to open it up since we have some more time to really think about it. And obviously, we don't want to make the survey so long that that people don't want to take it, but we want to get as much useful information out of it as we can.
Do you have that, where you can put the questions up?
I know, I'm trying to think if, can you email it to me really quickly and then I can?
Were there any revisions made? Because I think.
There have been no, we made comments from the initial distribution and we distributed again.
Okay.
There haven't been changes since then,
know
but,
what
do you think we should put something like, I think it's important to find out if people are even really aware of it. You know what I mean? Like something along the line of like awareness of this whole project.
Like how aware are you of the project?
Yeah, cause I think that gives us feedback on public outreach, right? And if we're doing it right, and if so, how did you hear about it? And then I also think there needs to be like a section for like concerns or suggestions. That the town should consider with like a comment section. And I also think there should be something about them being concerned about like impacts of safety businesses and of residential neighborhoods. Like how concerned are you that this proposed plan could impact traffic flow in a residential neighborhood? Like, and see what these residents really.
That's slightly leading, but I
That's
get that's.
concern is, depending on perspective, it could go either way.
Right, you don't have to word it the way I just said it, but like, I think it's important to know if that's a concern of theirs. And then you're also putting in safety, so you can see safety is leading also. Or an impact of what's gonna happen to businesses. Like, I think these are important points that you would wanna know how the residents feel. Cause like, it's stuff that I hear in the store all day, so there's definitely concerns.
I'm trying to think of how to word it,
I think it's a very valid question.
We get under number 17.
Do you think this plan will, increase traffic trying to go around the downtown, which will increase traffic
but
on the neighborhoods?
I'm trying to say. We have modeling that provides us information. People don't necessarily, like, that's not. How people feel about how traffic, they're gonna change their behavior is not necessarily the same thing as seeing how the modeling plays out and what it demonstrates. I think. I get what you're trying to get at. I'm trying to think of like a value neutral way to maybe ask an open-ended question about, maybe not even an open-ended question, but.
I think it assumes a conclusion we don't even know. Because we haven't seen modeling.
We could also just so like add it on to like when parking is difficult, what do you usually do? That's based on a current behavior, a current practice, and that's something that we can measure with some degree of fidelity. When there's a lot of traffic in the downtown, what do you usually do? That's something big, right?
Yeah.
It sort of captures that sentiment, but it's based on actual behavior as opposed to like, oh no, this is gonna be, and then I think that's the part where we can get a little bit tricky, but I think something like that.
Well, under number 17, you have when thinking about the Needham Center redesign, how important are the following goals? We do have traffic flow, minimizing delays and backups. You could go traffic redirection, you could put something there that's just not a leading question, so to speak.
Is another alternative for that option as well.
Right, yeah, just a bullet, just, are you,
Traffic diversion.
yeah.
It's a ranked question, so.
And it just basics, it's not leading me to one or the other.
Yeah.
Anything else? There's a question, so 16 was like,
16, yeah.
Please rate the following. Features would affect your experience in Needham Center, which are wider sidewalks, outdoor dining, safe bike lanes, additional crosswalks, slower vehicle speed, more public gathering spaces, additional greenery and more on-street parking.
So I'll ask Amy a question on that. Is there like an option where like, if I don't care about wider sidewalks, for example, that I can just like not, cause it's like a forced rank, right? So like,
Yeah, well, then that's.
6, 7, and 8, I might not care about any of 6, 7, and 8,
Yeah.
right? But I have to rank them that way. So I'm trying to figure out if there's a way we can structure it. So it's like,
So this has no
Don't
change,
care.
says no change.
Yeah,
Yeah.
honestly, there's no change, but I'm so glad you brought that up, because that is my like single biggest pet peeve with survey design is like, okay, rank all these things, but then like, I love number 1, but I hate, the 2, 3.
2 and 3, yeah,
Like, I don't care, I couldn't care less, and I think there's no way to capture that, so I think that would be, if we could sort of, so one of it is sort of no change, just sort of that like, either you're ambivalent or it doesn't really matter, but I think, yeah, this one's tricky, because it's, I love the idea of here are different things that would. So there's just to make sure we're all looking at the same thing, like what are these different features and how would they? Do you think they would affect your experience in Needham Center on a scale from much better to much worse? And the middle point is no change, but I don't know that a lot of these would. Who's gonna say, more trees is gonna make your experience much worse? So I think that's something that we could.
Well, yeah.
do you think
a
you
lot
could
of
do like
them-
a short answer, open format question, which is like, if there's one thing,
Answer.
if there's one thing that like you want to say about this project, like, do you know what I'm saying? Can you like force somebody in like a very short number of characters to be able to synthesize like their.
Yeah,
Do
that could be sort
you
of
get what I'm
this.
saying?
Yeah, see if I can add a comment to this too, just so we can capture this, I'm sorry, Artie.
No, just, a lot of people, when they look at these plans and look at the questions, look at the 2 lane. A lot of people have very positive feedback. I have very positive feedback. And, but the question, the question for me, at least, has never been, is this a really cool thing? Does this be a really cool experience as far as when you're downtown, as far as walking around? For me, the question has been, is it that versus, what the businesses is, the viability of their life?
And that's what I was just gonna say, in this survey, there's not much about the impact on businesses. What could happen and what the concerns are. And that, again, we are that whole plan. It's all businesses there, and there's literally like one little blip about economic development in here and that's it. You know, I think it's fair to find, like, you know, when I talk to people in the store, they are concerned about the businesses, and I think there needs to be something in here. How concerned are you that this will impact businesses? And you say it's leading, but we can say any of these questions are leading, really, you know?
Well, I think we did try to keep them as neutral as possible as far as trying to indicate preferences and indicate current behaviors. I think,
But if somebody doesn't think it'll impact it, they'll tell you it won't impact it.
I think it would be, at least for me, way more useful to know if, and I think this is germinating a different concept or idea for me when it comes to the survey. It's way more important for me to know from the businesses what they think, not about what other people think the businesses think. Do you get what I'm saying?
No, it's what they think. Like I have genuine concerns that my customers express about, they love coming downtown. They love the business, they love coming to all these different businesses, and they're concerned that they're gonna lose that. And I think it's important to acknowledge that it's not just the businesses who are afraid, it's also the pedestrians, I'm sorry, the residents are concerned with losing their downtown.
So access, so I guess my question would be, are they concerned about the existing businesses being able to maintain their viability here?
Their viability during the construction and loss of parking and loss of lanes and loss of, you know,
Yeah.
people who are cutting through, like, for instance, if 25% of my customers are cut through people and we don't want people cutting through anymore, that's like taking a 25% pay cut. And then that's when you lose, that's how you start losing these businesses, like. People love having our town center. They like, I can't tell you how many times I hear, I'm like, oh, that sounds like something like an Amazon thing. No, I wanna get it somewhere local first. They don't even wanna go to like Legacy Place, because they don't wanna buy it from a chain. They wanna buy it from a mom and pop in Needham Center. So they are very concerned. It's not just us concerned.
I'm getting
And
it
I think
too.
that they have the right to like express that.
The phrase, are you concerned about? Like, implies that there's something you should be concerned
Well,
about.
and
I think,
I'm not a pro at that kind of thing, but
Yeah.
there's a way you can figure it out, that you can see how, like, don't you wanna know how concerned residents?
yeah, I mean, I think the question almost, and I'm trying to say this in a way that I think will be the most helpful, so I'm kind of wordsmithing this out loud. I think the question is, because I think there's two things, right? Like the businesses that are here today could leave for a whole host of reasons. They could leave because of this project, they could leave because of rents, they could like, but I think the question is really, is it the exact business? Is it the type of business? Is it, because I think transition happens, right? Like that's just the nature of a downtown. I think what we were trying to get is like what pulls you to the downtown now, right? So if it's the businesses themselves, I think that's helpful data. And I'm trying to think if it's like, what brings you to the downtown now, maybe is the question. And is it the businesses? Is it the walkability? Is it the ability to do multiple things at once? Like, I'm just trying to think of how to ask that question.
So could we add it to a question we're already asking? So when you talk about the redesign and ranking goals like the safety, mobility, could we add?
It has to be something about like sustaining the current
Right,
businesses.
that's what I was just gonna say, like not only just
Right.
sustaining, but the growth, so the, sustaining and growing small businesses in Needham Center, like.
Can you
Or-
open, can you do an open-ended question of what are your,
retaining growth.
sorry, can you do an open-ended question where you're asking them, what are your top 3 businesses that you frequent downtown? So you have an idea of what people are coming into the downtown for, if that's what you're looking for, Karis? Is that?
Yeah,
is that
I'm
what
trying
you're
to,
looking for?
Well, I think the thing, going back to what I was saying a few minutes ago, was, I mean, this survey, it's a great survey. Great survey, but it's predicated on, in my opinion, it's predicated on, we already have a design that accommodates those wishes. Okay? So that is predicated on like a 2-lane, alternative or 2-lane. Versus, here's a survey, is the business, well, how else to phrase it, is the business viability more important, or is having more places to sit, meet more important?
I don't know if they're I think there is a concern, but I don't know, if like a correlation and not necessarily a causation of like, are they necessarily counterproductive choices in that? I think there's some concern that if you have less people going through the corridor, they'll see less of the businesses and therefore they won't go there, or potential customers won't go there. I think there's also, you know, if you make the downtown more walkable, people will spend more time there and therefore will spend more money there. So I think the problem I have is that depending on your perspective, you will answer that question differently. Because if I really care about the businesses, but I think that wider sidewalks are gonna ultimately help the economic viability of the town, I'm gonna say, it just doesn't necessarily, I'm trying to figure out what it means when somebody says
A
that.
survey isn't to get all the same answers, it's to get.
No, but I think I think two different people would answer that question the same way with different perspectives, and it doesn't tell us what their perspective is.
I mean, I find that about every survey, to be honest with you. Any survey I read, I'm like, this is not how I wanna answer. It's no offense, like, you know.
No, no,
you
that's,
really
but
would know.
that's the exact challenge here. So, and I'm love this, because I'm taking a lot of notes and trying to figure out how to, you know, how to noodle on
Like,
this, because I wanna make sure we can get it. That is always gonna be inevitable.
Right.
It's like, oh, I don't care about this question, and that doesn't make any sense. I wanna answer this way, so let's, yeah.
So Avery, do you think you have enough information to help us come up with a question that gets at the meat of what we're talking
I need
about?
to
Yeah.
sleep on it, but, yes, I think.
That's what I mean,
think
yeah.
The first thing though, that I'm thinking is that instead of a rank, I think scrap the rank. And just we can have those different attributes. I would love to include something about the businesses, whether that's just, you know, access or
Retention,
vitality, exactly.
Retention and growth.
And then just a place for people to be like, you know, this is not. You know, this matters to me a great deal, or this is the single most important thing, and then these things I'm sort of less focused on, but I think we can combine items here a little bit.
One question I have is,
You're on
At the
17.
harvest fair, you know, you put like the red, smile, like that whole thing.
Do you think that a separate survey for the businesses would be helpful?
Yes.
Yes,
I mean, yes, you
yes.
could, but like they had a problem with the delivery survey because we weren't, well, me too, because I wasn't able to answer certain things in a certain way, so it has to be structured, right? But you could do it, but I think, I do still stand by residents have a lot of the same concerns that businesses do.
I think there should be a separate survey for the businesses. Some of the questions maybe you're thinking of which one they're going to, but also questions related to the importance of the viability of the businesses versus big changes to downtown, however that's phrased. However many questions is needed to understand that. Because this survey here, again, it's a great survey, but it's not that survey.
Yeah, and I think there's multiple
That's
concerns,
survey.
right? So construction itself is going to be a challenge for businesses, and that's like not even,
Yeah.
I don't think that's that thing that anyone has any disagreement about that. And it's actually one of the reasons the initial project was only supposed to go from Maple to, it was gonna be like a 30-year plan. It was gonna tear up the town every 3 or 4 years, and we're trying to do it in a bigger chunk, right? So there's questions about, you know, why is the cost a little bit bigger? Well, we're doing the whole section of Great Plain Ave, so we don't have to come back and do it again and again and again, which was the initial plan.
Which I think is actually better for us,
Yeah.
if you did it the initial way.
In multiple pieces.
Oh, yeah.
So like
That's-
18 months every 3 years would be better than
Like.
2 years.
If I have to go 2 years without, if I have to go 2 whole years with my street being, or just like a couple of months.
It
just my
would-
section.
It's 18 months
Yeah.
for each
Per
section,
section.
yeah,
oh yeah,
versus like two
I was
and a half
that-
years.
That guy, what was his name, the economic development guy,
JP?
showed me like, oh, you just suck it up for like a month or 2 and then it's worth it.
well,
No, I mean, I think Liz, you were there, right, when we did that initial section?
I can tell you that when, when, the initial plan was being laid out, that one of the things that stopped it from even following that path was because the feedback from the businesses was, you mean like every 2 or 3 years, you're gonna tear up everything that's accessed new? And then that's gonna take 18 months to do. And then you're gonna do the next one, and the next one, the next, no, this is the whole.
We're talking about so we did construction,
five-
the
five
2
sections.
signalization.
My time.
Yeah, so that was 18 months, and I would say any roadway project where we're doing drainage is gonna be 18 months. So even just doing the drainage component of the project is going to be, even if we like literally decided we're not gonna touch anything, we're just gonna let everything be how it is and just fix the drainage, for example, it's going to be disruptive because it's gonna take almost an entire lane of traffic away when we do that construction. If we were to redo the sidewalks, it's gonna be disruptive because we have to rip up all the concrete that's existing and provide temporary accommodations. It's tricky doing a project in a downtown that's active, right? Compared to doing it in a residential neighborhood. And oftentimes we will do it at night, which also prolongs the timeline of the project. So I guess for clarity, that initial project was gonna be 18 months every 3 to 5 years.
And that and the
Okay.
feedback we
He
got.
literally told me 2 to 3 months. It's not done.
We wish that wasn't gonna happen, and that's why moving to doing a whole section, you get it, you go in, you get it done, then you don't touch it again for another 40, 50 years, so,
Mhm.
you know, you do have to go through the transition, but then you know you're done.
But I
There's
think-
nobody coming back 3 years later and tearing it up again.
I think it's valuable to know separately from, like, just trying to get at some of these questions for the businesses as far as like, you know, some of them were around during that project and I think they saw the things we did well, and I think they saw the things that we could have improved on, and how, even if, you know, we will have to do a construction project at some point in this corridor regardless, how can we do that in a way that helps and facilitates the businesses and communicates better than what we did in the past? And then I think some of the economic questions or concerns, like, how long do you plan on, you know, keeping your business in Needham, right? That's like a useful piece of data. You know, I'm gonna be here for 20 years, or I plan on moving to a bigger location, or, you know, that's helpful. You know, how many parking spots do you need? We can certainly look at like the planning board filings, but I think it's just useful to know, like, we have what the planning board says you need, we have what you might think you need, so we can kind of work that out. What are your busiest times a day? You know, trying to get at some of those concerns.
Because some businesses are more concerned with parking than others, and
Yeah.
some are more concerned with liens, you know.
And ask them too at that point is, you know, you need 10 parking spaces, let's just use a number. Do your customers typically in and out in 15 minutes, or is your customer more of an hour customer? Because then that would help you understand too. If you've got two businesses next to each other and they both need 15-minute parking, well, that makes that easy, because that side of the sidewalk's gonna roll over fast.
Yeah, that's smart.
And, you know, another block of businesses might all be businesses that need that 2-hour spot. It just helps you kind of look at your flow better.
So I'm thinking the business survey is supplemental to that bigger survey, so you would still want business owners and people who work there and everything else to take that other survey as well. But I think a question that gets specifically a questionnaire that specifically gets at business concerns, and we can, just like we vetted out the survey in this group, we can vet this survey out in the group, so I think it might help address some of the concerns you might have had earlier about the survey we sent out.
And I think what would be helpful, at least when I did the delivery survey, there was stuff I wanted you to know, but there wasn't a place for me to tell you what I needed you to know. So maybe in the bottom, say, any additional comments or concerns that we haven't asked about, because I think there was there a spot for that? Okay, I just felt like none of the boxes are the box I need, but I don't want to not check anything, so I was checking something that came this close.
I did the same thing, and then I got to the bottom and said, oh.
I think also what's needed is, it sounds like there's been, you know, some misunderstanding coming from somewhere else that turns out to be probably a misunderstanding. That is, what is going to be the flow for businesses during
Yeah.
this construction? You know, I mean.
It's a scary thought.
I mean, here,
It's fair.
I mean, here are the three versions. You know, what is this business here? Is it, are people actually gonna be able to get to it?
Yeah, like, will people be able to get to downtown at all?
You know, just,
Would you sure?
just,
So yeah, I mean, we did all our construction at night, but if you think about, you know, doing things like sidewalk, and you're right of way, right? It's like
Yeah.
buildings go right up to the sidewalk.
Yeah.
So you have to come up with temporary accommodation. So there's like ramping. We have to then make it, it's tricky.
Mhm.
And it's, I mean, I think Liz, you were at bar 3 when we did the downtown? It's not pretty, I think is a fair argument. And you know, other than just doing topical stuff, it's tricky.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to laugh, she just shook her head a lot.
No,
it's
no,
fair.
it was honestly horrible, and I had a couple clients that like had actually stepped in cement because they didn't properly put the correct stuff out when they did the sidewalks. So no, it was a mess. It was an absolute mess.
I was here then, and I avoided going into the center of town on my lunch break because I couldn't handle the stress.
so I think it's important to understand.
But I think that,
The difference in how much construction there is gonna be.
Yeah, and
In the three different plans, because there's definitely gonna be some, I believe there's some difference, I don't know to what
Yeah,
degree.
and
Obviously, there's the drainage,
Yeah.
which is there anyway.
even if we took everything up and put everything back exactly the way it is, it's going to be that disruptive either way. So the disruption happens from the fact of, like, I think there's two economic concerns. I think there's the impact of construction, which, to be honest, the project was originally, like, we had enough money to do the original project that we had conceived in 2020, which of course we did not do because we knew how difficult the business, you know,
Mhm.
the businesses were challenged. Also, outdoor life became the norm, and you can't tear up a downtown that everybody is then experiencing. So that was one of the reasons. At some point, we do have to do something, so it's trying to figure out like that timing of it where, you know, there's a lot of economic pressures right now that are on everyone and especially small businesses, and how to navigate that. And then, you know, I'd like to say there's a time horizon where we know we're gonna come out of it, but I don't think we do. And I think that's adding an additional stress level, because at some point you do have construction that needs to happen. And it's like, how do we navigate that with some of these unpredictable challenges? So I think getting some of the business feedback on that alone
Yeah.
would just be helpful from just a project management perspective.
I wanna ask, like even just timing within the, seasonal. I'm assuming you don't necessarily wanna be doing construction in December, January and February. If you can, it's probably not the most ideal time to be doing construction. But then you've got businesses, like, I know for us, June is June and the last 2 weeks of August are our busiest time of the year. Like December, June is busier than December for us, unless we get a snow.
Yeah, so yeah,
If people aren't always buying shoes for gift, but they need all their kids' school, all their supplies in camp. And then in August, they need all their stuff for back to school, so like, those two pockets are ideal for doing construction weather-wise. But unless there's really good signage and signage for where people can park if there's not on-street parking, like those things are gonna, I know that's down the road, but like those things are important, and that would be important to tell a business, like, how you're going to help them get through that construction.
yeah, and I think even knowing like from a communication perspective, right? Like
Yeah.
knowing what your busiest time is. So I think asking questions like, what is your busiest time of year? What is your busiest like time of day? You know, like
Yeah.
what's your, what are your pain points? I think
Like
is
July,
helpful.
you could tear up the front of my store for the whole month of July and I would care.
I know.
I'd be
So
only
start it-
likely to do that, because then I'd have an excuse for my bad numbers.
Yeah. So the interesting thing is, right, with the types of winters we're having, we have more flexibility to do some of this work. Because again, a lot of the work is underground. And underground work, as long as the ground isn't frozen,
That's what
we
I'm
get
thinking,
flexibility.
January, February.
When it comes to doing like asphalt work, concrete work, that's when you get a very limited season. And we also have weather to contend with, whether or not you get rain or don't get, like this summer was a great summer for construction, because we didn't have a lot of rain, but we've had other seasons where every other day we have to cancel projects. So it is, outdoor construction is its own tricky part, and doing it in this corridor is going to be a challenge.
Start at Pickering. You get to practice it.
Put it together.
Okay.
Is it enough to?
I think we got a lot. Yeah.
Okay. So next agenda item is to discuss the timelines for public engagement.
Guess what? I have something to say about that. Guys. So I took it upon myself to talk to customers about that, because I think it's important, because they're the ones that are gonna be going to the public engagement. I got to like 30 customers, and then I was like, I don't have to ask anymore. December was an absolute no. Everyone's too busy, holidays, the whole thing. The majority of people, well, majority of people said January, and they said to do it like mid-January, but not Martin Luther King weekend, because they go away. February is a concern because of school break. Some people were saying March, but
This is for the, like a public hearing?
Yeah.
Okay.
but it was like, one of the first things that came out of everyone's mouth is, well, don't do it in December. Like, that was like,
Yeah.
like literally, so then I stopped from there, but I did take everyone's first name, so you know, I wasn't making this up, it's real.
Sounds
And,
reasonable.
that was like what I got. If you guys are looking to do it sooner, if you're looking to do it later, then they were saying March.
Yeah, I mean,
Preference for in person or is?
Well,
virtual?
I did ask that too. So we did get a lot of sending a flyer. That they want to see a flyer. A QR code, believe it or not, wasn't as much of a priority for people. They were like, but, and all ages said that, which I was surprised. They wanted the info on the flyer, and they wanted a virtual version for people who can't get there. So I don't know if those breakout groups would work, if it's a virtual thing, or if you do it in addition to it.
Well, I mean, they worked at the large house that.
You are able to,
Well,
yeah.
yeah, with a certain population, of
Yeah.
course, but as long as you have enough people to help moderate.
I did large house on the tree virtual.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I saw yesterday, I don't know. So then they also said, wait, what was the question you guys asked me again? I forgot.
timeline, I think we're talking about
The
timelines.
timeline, but then how to
QR
do it,
code,
right?
yeah, QR code. right.
Yeah, so a flyer, virtual, or they also. I don't know. I wrote it down and I can't find where I put it down. Send the flyer,
Postcard mail.
postcard, but the postcard that have as much info on it as possible. And then, oh, like a place for feedback. So like if you're sending a postcard, if you have concerns, like to be able, they can send an email to whoever the right people are, like that kind of thing.
I mean, I think January is very doable. Again, we talked to the select board and we said,
Mhm.
the select board did ask, they're like, who set the timelines? And I sort of indicated that at some point,
It's gone.
not that I don't love having these meetings, but at some point we have to like have some forward progress and figure out where we're going and get to the point of getting public engagement, because I think that's the first step in the project, not the
Mhm.
last step. And so, December was sort of an estimate of if you were trying to get some consensus by the summer, where you go. There's no requirement that we do that as far as meeting December. I think it's just continually making progress. So I think January would be a reasonable time to execute the survey and do a public engagement event.
As long as we have like enough details for them. Like, that's the whole thing. So when I was saying the business feedback was that things are very rushed. One thing that does come up a lot is the lights. Like, I know people are saying that's not gonna make a difference, but
It's not gonna make a difference. So the lights will make a difference to the current experience, because for the next 3 years, it'll help people get through the downtown. And if we do go with the 4-lane solution, there isn't a lot of modification to the existing signals, so existing signals will just be there. If you go with,
Yes, I thought the signaling change and the new program and the new structure we're doing was gonna be installed around December.
yeah, so the intent is to have that, right, so we'll have it in place for several years before we actually execute the project in the
Yeah.
downtown. So even if we were to completely change the orientation of the downtown and we had to put in new signals, there's still a 3-year benefit to it.
Oh, okay. You're saying if we put the signals in now, then if we change the 4-lane later on, nothing's changing. They're already there.
We might not have to change anything. I mean, that's
Yeah.
one of the benefits of the
No.
4-lane is it's the least disruptive, so you're doing the least amount of construction.
right, so, well, that's what I meant. So they wanna see changes the resyncing of the lights. This is the businesses, not residents, resyncing of the lights. What changes does that make? Cause then it makes them, that could make you lean more into a 4-lane, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that the modeling, I know the modeling is harder for people to understand because it's all conceptual, but the modeling is gonna be more helpful in providing information on the comparison, because there's multiple changes happening at once. So if you're shortening your pedestrian length, you have shorter pedestrian phasing, which makes the phasing for the other lanes go faster. If you're signaling, like in the pocket lane selection, you'll have dedicated left-hand turn signals, which also phases the traffic differently. So you're sort of talking about 3 different plans that manage traffic differently and are gonna have 3 different traffic patterns, not necessarily like current condition. So I think that's like the reason why it'll be great, and we're very much looking forward to getting the right signals installed, and that's why there was a delay in the project, because we wanted to make sure we were getting the best adaptive signals that we could. But if the town chooses to change the configuration and layout, it's gonna completely change the way traffic moves through. Having a dedicated left-hand turn lane is very different than having a left straight through lane as far as how traffic moves through. So I think maybe it might help get a little bit of faith in the Public Works Department when we say, like, when you improve the signalization, when you improve coordination, it has a positive effect on how traffic processes, and that might be helpful in trying to get people to have some faith that when we say how traffic will process under theoretical conditions, it will actually parse out. But it won't have an impact on the modeling for all 3 is consistent and is gonna show how traffic will function, at least relative to each other. And I think that's what people care about more.
And will that change, this is, making that left turn onto Highland, like, will that change in December? Is that part of?
The only change is that Dedham Ave will have, right now it has a straight and a left, and it will have a left and a straight left.
I'm talking just about the lights.
Nothing will,
Not any of these plans, like.
yeah, so nothing will change in the new configuration, except Dedham Ave will have 2 left-hand turns. You can make a left-hand turn on the far Right.
In that way, but so when you're going up Great Plain Avenue, you wanna make left on Highland, that's not gonna change with the reconfiguration?
It will not change.
Really?
If I can just.
So you can't have, the issue is,
Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah,
you
you-
would go straight or
Yes.
left, that's not gonna turn to left, like a left turn lane and then straight or right?
no, the traffic, the reason that, again, the traffic modeling that we did and then for the project initially, and then Niche looked at again, indicated that that right-hand turn on Dedham clears more traffic out than if you had a left-hand turn onto Highland.
If that's like, that's the A number one complaint I heard about everyone, even Kevin Keane doesn't like that, like. Yeah.
Yeah, so just to be clear, so the improvements that, for that project, we're not actually changing any of the turning, like the actual signals themselves, like arrows or anything like that. on
Okay.
there. It's just the detection, other than the change in that one lane where it's gonna allow you to go straight or left, which doesn't require a change to signals, other than just the actual camera that detects if there's vehicles there. So the camera is is really the biggest upgrade, is that the camera will have like a smart brain that will be able to adjust traffic patterns in reaction to demand. So that will change, help manage the biggest peak periods. But it's not going to significantly change the results of the modeling that's on part of this project, because the single biggest driver of the modeling is the lane configurations, how how much allowance there is for turning movements. Those things are not going to be significantly altered by the.
In all three scenarios, we would have adaptive signals there as well, that would do this, that would have the same technology that we're looking at implementing that we don't have currently.
So when we talk about it, and I apologize because I probably should understand this, but I don't 100%. When we talk about adaptive signals, that means if you have 10 cars stacked here and only 2 cars stacked this way, coming parallel across, this light would stay green longer to let those 10 cars through before it changed to let 2 cars go this way?
That's the basic idea, but
Yeah.
it's working on several levels because it's also analyzing how it will affect all the other
Yes,
phases as
but-
well. But it is making tweaks to it on the fly. So and the more data that it collects and the more time we have after implementation, the smarter it will get. The more it will anticipate certain times of day. It'll start to recognize what's going on with the train and figure out how to get around that. So that's the biggest.
Okay.
I personally think it's really smart and it's gonna.
It was smart.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll get that smart.
Over time,
Because you don't need to change the verb to do that.
And so that means you can't change the through the lane on Great Plain Ave coming west in that direction, for example, you can't pause that green light to allow the traffic going east to take that left first, for example, because that doesn't require an arrow. That requires a pause.
Yeah, so basically it's gonna work within like a framework that is set up in advance, and then it's gonna make tweaks, add a couple seconds to one phase, take a couple seconds away from another phase. Because if you change things like immediately without, traffic is flowing, people need time to actually stop or turn. So it gives a couple seconds for that adjustment.
So I think you're asking specifically about a delayed green.
Yeah.
And the system won't on its own make a delayed green when we don't have a delayed green program, because you have to
Yeah.
provide the driver clarity that sometimes they have a delayed green and sometimes there are other cars coming the other direction.
Sure.
So we can't it won't make changes that would require additional signage.
Right, because like we would have to decide to do that, and then that would be the case going forward.
Yeah.
We wouldn't change that, because it would be.
But then that has impacts for the eastbound
It
direction.
would be dangerous. Basically.
So we can work towards a mid-January,
Mhm.
All right.
for our first step back into the public engagement. Yeah, I think starting there, right, will work.
Good.
Should we take a vote on mid-January as
If we're ready.
if we're ready?
Mid-January, if it's ready, not just, like, if it's thought out and it's right, then mid-January. If it's not ready, we shouldn't do it.
Yeah, so just for clarity, I don't think we're really talking about adjustments to the plans themselves. We're talking about adjustments to the information that we're able to convey to people about
Correct.
each plan to make it as clean as possible.
Yes.
Great.
And we're
And,
gonna,
and just so you know, this, I didn't ask them about the survey.
Mhm.
I was just asking about if you were gonna come to town hall, like that.
Yeah, I think that doing them around the same time makes sense because they're two different models of collecting information. And it's like, it would be weird to me if we did like a survey in December and a public engagement in January, or if we did like a public engagement in January and a survey in February. Like, I think it makes sense, at least to me, that they happen around the same timeline. So if we're gonna do one, I think it's a good time to do the other.
and do we know when the animation? What will we have for animation?
I think Apex will be coming here at our next meeting, and maybe that's a good thing to focus on.
But I also think it's important that. Reason people are saying January is because they feel that they have the time to be able to actually focus on doing it.
Yeah.
And so you want to do both of them at the same time, in the period of time that they have the time to focus on both of those individual things.
Yeah.
Do you want to take a vote?
Someone wanna make a motion to
I motion,
have a goal, we'll have a goal of having our public engagement mid-January. That we'll try to meet, assuming we have all of the information that we need.
I make a motion that we do our public engagement mid-January, providing we have all the needed necessary information.
Excellent.
Okay, we'll take a roll call vote. Abby Baker,
Yes.
Tim Bolger, yes. Artie Crocker.
Yes.
Lisa Alcock.
Yes.
All good.
Yes.
Liz Hay,
Yes.
Paula Jacobson,
Yes.
Kevin Keen,
Yes.
Avery Newton,
Yes.
Diane Nanny,
Yes.
Karis Lustig.
Yes.
Yeah, the motion passes, so we'll work on, that in January. Yeah, okay, the next agenda item is to adjourn, so.
Well, I think,
Sure.
I think we should go to the next agenda.
All right, I make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
I'm not here, I'm gonna keep everyone here for now. No, I just have a question just related to the outreach. There was gonna be like a postcard we had talked about, and then you did mention that too. I just wanted to clarify, would that all go out around the same time?
I think using that as a deadline.
I see, okay. Thank
So
you.
if like January is the time, you probably, we'll talk about how, when it makes sense to have a postcard go in advance, but I imagine 2 to 3 weeks in advance, we would want to do public communication about the survey and the public engagement
And
event.
it's at the dump and it's at this sign right here.
We can do those
That
signs,
was
yeah.
Very clear that people wanted to, see that the way they've seen.
We also have DCW on the committee. They can do whatever they want.
It's so true. It's so
I
true.
was surprised that the dump postcard survey was the best ever, supposedly, but it was still only 2,500 people.
That's really high. I mean, you guys do survey,
That's
that's really high for
mind-blowing.
surveys.
8,500.
That's why.
Well, I mean, they dumped it.
Did we vote?
I mean, I read them, my husband said I
didn't get
can't.
Yeah, I got pen. Did we make a motion? So a second.
Some people like, I want the yellow bags.
For the event, not to adjourn,
It's
right?
rain.
No, you didn't make a motion. All right, I make a motion to adjourn.
Second, it's 2,700.
Okay, so we have a motion on the table to adjourn.
Second.
There we go.
It's been seconded twice, so we'll take that.
So four, that's the second, third.
Eileen Baker,
Third.
Oh.
What do I say?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, if you want to leave.
Yes.
I didn't hear it last time, right? Okay.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Yes,
Thank
Tim
you.
Bolger votes yes. Artie Crocker.
Yes.
Lisa Alcock.
Yes.
All good.
Yes.
Liz Hay,
Yes.
Paula Jacobson.
Yes.
Kevin Keen,
Yes.
Avery Newton,
Yes.
Diane Nanny.
Yes.
Karis Lustig.
Yes.
Okay. Meeting adjourned.
All right. Yes, yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay.